agreement with the House with Donald Trump?
We signed our ethics pledge, which was the most robust ethics pledge, but I haven't signed any back into the normal DOJ employment back.
And there was no non-disclosure agreement with anything you signed, correct?
I don't believe so, but I don't know what the standard DOJ forms are.
In fact, the only thing you really had to do before you could assume your current position was take an oath to the United States Constitution, isn't that right?
I proudly took the oath for the second time when I came back to the Department of Justice.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions about the U.S. Constitution that you can easily answer yes or no. The first question is, there is no sentence in the Constitution that states that the President's National Security Advisor can't be indicted, correct?
Congressman, as is consistent with the practice of the Department of Justice, we investigate crimes and we prosecute individuals that commit crimes.
Just asking a simple question. I'll go on. There's no sentence in the U.S. Constitution that states the President's former campaign chairman can't be indicted, correct?
Same answer to your previous question.
Does that sentence exist in the Constitution?
Of course it does not, Congressman.
That's
you know
right,
that, and I know that.
Right, because Paul Manafort was indicted. There is no sentence in the Constitution that says the President's children can't be indicted, correct?
Congressman, you know, you can give me the whole list. I mean, you know, sort of.
No, I'll give you three more.
Okay.
Yeah, right?
There is no sentence in the United States Constitution that says that the President's children cannot be indicted.
There's no sentence in the U.S. Constitution that says the Vice President can't be indicted, correct?
That's correct.
Right. There's no sentence in the U.S. Constitution, this is my last one, there's no sentence in the U.S. Constitution that says the sitting President of the United States cannot be indicted, correct?
Congressman, because that is the opinion of the Office of
I don't actually care what DOJ policy is. I'm asking about the Constitution.
With the practices of the Department
Mr. Whitaker,
of Justice.
it's just a yes or no question.
Years.
Mr. Whitaker, I'm asking you a factual.
Under both administrations.
After this hearing, you can spin the Constitution all you want. As you sit here today, you just have to answer a factual yes or no question. I'm going to make it even easier for you. There's no sentence in the Constitution that says, quote, the sitting President of the United States cannot be indicted, unquote. Correct?
Congressman,
yes or no?
As you know, I
have it right here.
I have a copy myself.
Right. So is that sentence in this Constitution? It's not, correct? I'm not trying to trick you. It's not a hard question.
I don't. Again,
it's a founding document of our federal government. Is that sentence in this Constitution?
Congressman, you and I both know that the way that the OLC opinion is written.
I'm asking about the Constitution, the founding
question as to why the President
of the United States. I'm just asking about the Constitution.
Sitting President of the United States can't be indicted.
I'm just going to, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to submit the U.S. Constitution for the record and say, no, that sentence is not in there. Now we're going to move on. Earlier today, you had testified that you did not communicate to Donald Trump or senior White House advisors about the special counsel's investigation. So I'm going to ask you a related question. Did you communicate to Donald Trump or any senior White House advisors about investigations from the Southern District of New York concerning the Trump Organization, the Trump Inaugural Committee, Michael Cohen, or other investigations that relate to Trump entities or potentially the President?
Congressman, I mentioned that I said other investigations in my opening statement. I really don't have anything further to add to that answer.
And when you said other investigations, you mean you communicated to the President about other investigations?
No, I didn't. That's not what I said in my opening statement. I'll refer you back to my opening statement. I was very clear.
Did you communicate to the President and any senior White House advisors about investigations from the Southern District of New York related to Trump entities?
Again, I was very explicit in my opening statement as to that, not only about my communications regarding the Special Counsel's Office, and I said other investigations, and the Southern District of New York would be included in other investigations.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move to another subject. The President has talked about national emergency. Under the latest FBI data, it's correct, isn't it, that violent crime across the United States has gone down?
Yeah, we celebrate actually that violent crime has gone down over the last 2 years.
Property crime has gone down as well, isn't that right?
Congressman, as I sit here right now, I believe generally all crime is down over the last 2 years.
Then my last question.
Trump was elected.
Sure. My last question to you is: you would agree with Donald Trump, wouldn't you, when last year he tweeted out that border crossings are at a 45-year low?
We saw a precipitous decline in border crossings after the president was elected and sworn into office. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to retain those gains, and we've seen an absolute dramatic surge in family units.
Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Whitaker, before you took the call from President Trump, you had a fascinating career. Owned a daycare center, a concrete supply business, trailer sales, GOP activist, U.S. attorney who unsuccessfully prosecuted Iowa's first openly gay state legislator on trumped-up Hobbs Act charges that were dismissed by the jury in about an hour, Senate candidate. There have been some scandals, too. Here's one. Trump's acting attorney general involved in firm that scammed veterans out of life savings. Veteran says, I spent the money on a dream. I lost everything. But the newspapers say you struck gold when you arrived in Washington, which the president calls the swamp. Here's one that tells the story. Conservative nonprofit with obscure roots and undisclosed funders paid Matthew Whitaker $1.2 million. According to the Washington Post, in the 3 years after he arrived in Washington, Whitaker received more than $1.2 million as the leader of a charity that reported having no other employees. That's a pretty good deal. Now, what was the name of the charity that you ran, Mr. Whitaker?
Congressman, you've mentioned a lot in your...
No, but I'm asking you a very specific question. What was the name of the charity?
You have challenged my character.
No, I'm asking you a question. I control this time, Mr. Whitaker. If you want to ask the chairman for time of your own, you can do it. This is my time. Mr. Whitaker, you don't run this committee. You don't run the Congress of the United States, and you don't run the judiciary.
The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman is correct. The witness will answer the questions, and it's up to the gentleman to decide what questions. The gentleman will continue. We'll resume.
What was the title of the not-for-profit that you ran?
What time period, sir?
What was the last title? I know it changed its name 3 different times, right? What was the final name?
While I was employed as the executive director, it was called the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust.
Did you name it?
I did. Actually,
those are highly noble goals, accountability and civic trust. So let's talk about some accountability and civic trust. Mr. Whitaker, I've got a question for you.
No, you asked me a question.
I asked you a question. I control the floor, Mr. Whitaker. You don't understand. Now,
the gentleman controls the time, and if he wishes, as many members have done on occasion, they make a statement, they don't even ask a question, but if he wishes to proceed to another question, it's his time.
But Congressman, I do not feel, Mr. Chairman, I do not feel like my answer would be complete on the record.
It's up to
the question he asked.
okay, Mr. Whitaker, see if you can get into this. Tell us where the money came from that you were paid, the $1.2 million that you were paid before you went to the Department of Justice. I'm asking my question.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, which overrules your question. Point of order.
The gentleman will explain his point. The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman will state his point of order.
Look, we're going to go down this probably many more times, but again, if you want to do a confirmation hearing, this is not under the scope of this hearing. This is not a confirmation hearing, and is not shown to be a...
Mr. Chairman, this goes to...
The gentleman's point of order is not well taken. The gentleman from Maryland has the discretion to ask the questions. The gentleman will proceed.
Appeal the ruling of the chair.
The
gentleman has appealed the ruling of the chair. The gentlelady has moved to table. All in favor of the motion to table the appeal of the ruling of the chair will vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ruling of the motion is tabled.
Mr. Chairman, you and I engage in a call.
The gentleman will...
Can we suspend the clock and you and I engage?
No. We're in the middle of the...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Is the ranking member just going to continue to interrupt when he doesn't like the flow of questions?
Excuse me.
I'll probably make a point of order when that needs to be made.
I
Right
hope
now,
Good if it'd be useful if it was actually a point of order.
Everyone will please suspend. The gentleman made a point of order. It was ruled out of order. Right now, the gentleman has the time. If the ranking member wants to make a point, I'll recognize him after the gentleman is completed. The gentleman will resume.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been reported publicly that there was one donor. And as we understand it, I think you're testifying today that you were the sole employee of the group. So there was one donor and one employee. Do you know who the donor was to the group that funded your salary for $1.3 million?
Yes, I do.
Who was the donor?
The donor was another nonprofit 501c3 organization called the Donors Trust.
Okay, now that was the pass-through vehicle, but who reached into their pocket and wrote the check to go through that to pay your salary?
Congressman, as you know, because you've looked at this issue, the Donors Trust is much bigger than the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust and raises millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars every year. I actually, as I sit here today, have no idea who the donors to Donors Trust
Okay,
that then
thank
funded
you.
the
All right,
foundation.
well then, I've got a theory that I want to float with you, and it goes to something very strange that's been happening at the Department of Justice recently. A casino billionaire and magnate Sheldon Adelson hates online gambling for obvious reasons. It's competition for him. He wants people in the casinos, not online. And he spent more than $1 million lobbying Congress to override a 2000 opinion by the Office of Legal Counsel at DOJ, saying that the Wire Act plainly prohibits only sports gambling online, not gambling in the states, which is why Florida, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, lots of states have built important businesses for themselves online. But Congress wouldn't change the law according to the demands of Mr. Adelson. So rather than change the law, he decided to try to get the Department of Justice to change the interpretation of the law, and he threw millions into a campaign to remake the DOJ and get the Office of Legal Counsel to perform a complete reversal and say that the Wire Act bans the kinds of lotteries that states run online, even though its language plainly prohibits only sports betting. And when Donald Trump won, and Mr. Sessions became AG, and you became Chief of Staff, DOJ leadership ordered a reevaluation of this legal question, and what do you know? The Office of Legal Counsel found some subtle and invisible points of law that apparently escaped the Department of Justice back in 2011, and it reversed the plain reading of the interpretation, which talks specifically about sports betting. Now, were you involved in that decision?
Congressman, the General Sessions was recused at the time that decision came out.
So were you recused too?
Therefore, I was recused, and so I was not involved in that decision.
Did you ever talk to Sheldon Adelson about it?
No, I've actually never met Sheldon.
Okay, did you talk to any of his lobbyists about it?
No, I did
Did you
not.
talk to Charles Cooper about it?
No, but I do know Charles Cooper, and I would point out one of the things, Mr. Raskin.
Well,
it's
look,
very
if you can ask the chairman for time, but I can't give you my time. Forgive me, we only have 5 minutes.
OLC
So,
opinion
The
came out.
gentleman controls the time. At the conclusion of his
Is the
statement,
chairman not wanting
at the
the witness
conclusion,
to answer?
at the conclusion of his 5 minutes, I will afford
Okay.
the witness some time, but the gentleman controls the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In January and February of 2018, the chairman and vice chairman of Wild Rose Casino and Resorts, a casino in Iowa, each donated $2,600 to your Senate campaign, which was over 4 years before when you lost that campaign. How did these casino operators come to donate to your campaign several years after you lost? Did you talk to them?
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness may answer the question.
To answer your question specifically, no, I did not. To go back to the other point I'd like to make, Congressman, is that the first OLC opinion that preceded the one we just issued in November was done, and the state of Illinois provided a white paper regarding the position on the Wire Act. And so I think it is very consistent, and your inference that somehow that process was corrupted or corrupt is absolutely wrong, and the premise of your question I reject.